Hello everyone again, and welcome to another episode of FiST Chat, the vodcast that covers topics related to film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner, and I'm joined again by the ever-knowledgeable Stephan Kern in Adelaide. How are you doing there, Steve?
Hi everyone, I'm doing fine. I just got back from Sydney actually. Looking forward to another FiST Chat.
Absolutely. And today we're actually going to be talking about art versus business in filmmaking. There's the old adage, it's the film business, it's not film art or film whatever else that we're talking about. But there is almost an inherent conflict, obviously, just even by definition, between the two disciplines. But we'll have a bit of a chat as we go along with that sort of thing. But just something I wanted to start with, Steve, just something that started off with me, just in thinking about it, was that inherent contradiction. You've got art, or in this case film, is it's like a self-expression, a creation of a unique sort of product, so that people can respond to intellectually or creatively or emotionally, and it's very much dependent on who is creating it, whether it's an individual, if that's like a painting or something like that. Obviously a film is done by a team, and the director has the overall execution of that. But it's still the same kind of concept. It's a creation of a unique product to influence the experience for someone emotionally or intellectually or something like that. But when you contrast that to something like business, where it's relying exclusively on the idea that the product is the same and has to continually go out and be dependable and repeatable to ensure repeat business, and if you get the word out, it gets even bigger and bigger and bigger. And then if you put those two concepts together, you would almost think that that's just about impossible for both of them to coexist, yet somehow they both need each other in order to work. So, I mean, what do you think about all that sort of stuff?
Well, I think really, filmmaking and the art and business relationship is really two very separate things. I mean, in the cinema, for the viewer, maybe it can be argued that it's art, but certainly for anyone who tries to make a film, it's all about business, and I don't think there's any question about that. And I don't know, is this going to end up an argument about whether or not Star Wars killed art in filmmaking?
Well, it always leads to that question, doesn't it? And the funny thing is, that became such a huge business thing, like in terms of as a product. It's you just put Star Wars on something and it sells. Yet when it was being produced, like nobody thought it was ever going to amount to anything. So it was like in effect George Lucas's art piece for kids kind of thing. So it's fascinating how that works.
Well, if you want to take that a step further, then okay, let's look at Spielberg and Lucas. Now, I guess we know who made the better films, and we know which one is the wealthier one. Yeah. So I think that shows you that they're two very distinct pathways.
Obviously, because money is required to invest in a film, so in that respect, you have to obviously adhere to what an investor wants to get out of it. An investor is not going to put money into a film just for the hell of it, and because they get their own little piece out of it. 9 times out of 10.
Well, that's the American model. I will say that the Australian model for making films was predicated for a long time on actually losing money. And they, probably... But let's not go there. I don't know.
Oh, well, that's almost an entirely different kettle of fish with government money and, the old 10BA tax offsets, and that it would actually be better. You'd actually come out ahead if you made a loss, if that makes sense.
That's right, but it was a very interesting business model, and that certainly put business ahead of art in filmmaking, even though they were looking for losses as opposed to making money.
Just looking at say the Hollywood trend of late, you can really see it's kind of a bit hard to distinguish where it's you can't really find an exact line where it happened, but right now it really has gone all business, in the sense that films that are produced today, if it's not a sequel or based on an established property or anything like that, it's just not going to get made. There's no sort of belief in it. Every now and then you'll get a 30 or $40 million budgeted film, but there's usually an established director attached to it, an example being The Social Network. But then again, you look at the marketing on that, it's based on a website that is used by 400 million people. So, the thinking is, well, there might be a market for that.
I'm actually surprised the film didn't do better if there's that many people using Facebook.
Well, you can imagine if every single one of them went to see the film, how much it would have been bigger than Avatar. But it's fascinating, just comparing and contrasting these ideas. Especially, I just want to get to this idea of like we just mentioned then, that right now it's all about established properties, and this is the idea of business coming in where they want to reproduce the same product over and over again to get the same result or better. There was a time when they would do that, but then there were also those people in Hollywood that they might roll the dice on something to see if they could create something new, which doesn't seem to be happening anymore at that level. And that's kind of a shame, I think, because I think if you're a film investor and if you're one of those people that can roll the dice on something, you really have to have some balls to figure out what is going to sell. I mean, that's just not an easy thing to figure out when it's a film, because it comes back to that opposing sort of thinking that art is the creation of a unique product. Business is looking for something that's dependable and has worked before. So how one infuses the other, and being able to figure out how taking something that's going to work as an art piece but is also going to work as a business piece must be very, very difficult to figure out.
Absolutely, and I think the flip side of that as well is that, as we know, that there are loads of great books and loads of great film scripts out there that will never be published or never be produced. And, as they say, having a good script isn't good enough. It's got to be a great script. And then, even then, there's another 1,000 great scripts out there. So really, to even get a good film made, never mind the crap ones, to even get a good film made, the chances are very slim. So you have to be a very good business person to do that. So you have to be able to do the deals. You have to be very sure of yourself. You have to be able to get the attachments. Otherwise, I think, as we know, you're always going to struggle. And people see the hit films and they see the great films that, are artistically excellent, have great scripts, and you see them occasionally make it through Hollywood, and people say that's fantastic. But, for every film that achieves that, they don't see the 1,000 that never got made, or the 1,000 great scripts sitting in rubbish bins around the world.
Yeah. I mean, the amazing thing too is that you've got almost a requirement that if you get a film that's artistically successful and has that appeal, that is going to influence the business side of things. But if you're trying to set up a film thinking of it as a business proposition, you're probably not going to be looking at making a film in that way, are you? Because it's you don't want something unique. I mean, just as an example, I know you don't like the film, but which I'm actually surprised at, because I actually thought it was all right. But if we take as an example Inception, now generally speaking, from an artistic point of view, that was well received, but it was also, like, from a financial standpoint, highly successful. Now, what made that special, I think, is that in the sense that obviously they're marketing off the back of the director in this particular case. But what do you think about that sort of thing, where it's almost like this film is made that is artistically well received, but then the film actually does well from a financial standpoint?
Okay. Well, I will. I'm not going to comment on what I think of Inception, but from an artistic point of view. But definitely, from a business point of view, I think you've got to appreciate how many hard yards Christopher Nolan put in, in the years prior. I mean, you just don't direct a film like Dark Knight just by luck. So he obviously has a good track record in the Hollywood business, and he's worked very, very hard, you know, and that's how he managed to back a project like Inception. Whether it was good or not probably didn't matter as much as the fact that he had the right pedigree. He'd shown with his other films that, you know, he could direct if he had a decent script, which he may or may not have had with Inception. But, you know, the fact is he built a good business model. And when you're throwing that amount of money, and the figures aren't insignificant in Hollywood, when you're throwing that sort of money around, you've got to at least have faith that the guy directing the film might be able to make some of it back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, just as another point, like James Cameron's always been famous for saying that the director is responsible for the artistic sort of, you know, oversight of the project, and the producer, on the other hand, is the one looking at the bottom line and making sure everything runs to schedule, and almost like the studio's representative in that respect. And that's where the inherent conflict you'll find on, say, a film set comes from, because you'll get these clashes because the director's going to be calling for another take to get that, you know, that perfect shot or that perfect thing or whatever, but the producer's saying, no, look at the clock, buddy, you got to wrap this up so we can move to the next thing.
Well, I've got an interesting little anecdote on that. I always, you know, have a few issues with David Lynch for the way some of his films end, but I don't know if this is true, but someone was telling me the other day that David Lynch would come back, rework his films, and then, you know, start to reshoot various scenes and change the emphasis from the script, but then would run out of time and money, and the producers would just shut the film down. And that's why some of his films end inconclusively. Now, I don't know if that's folklore, myth, or something else, but it does kind of make sense.
And I guess another funny point on David Lynch, he was quoted as saying that he always gets the big you know, rapport in Cannes when any of his films get shown, and he jokingly said that yeah, I get the rap in Cannes, but that just means my films don't make money.
There you go. You must be a great artist.
Absolutely. But I guess just to wrap it all up, with this inherent conflict, I think filmmakers need to be aware of the fact that they can't afford to be precious about the art, so to speak, but at the same time, it's almost like you've got to be aware of not allowing the business part of it to have a negative impact on the product. So what do you think about that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, you know, as anyone who has ever directed or produced a film knows, it's a fine line. And I think the only way to really get the best balance is to be prepared. So if you do your pre-production properly, maybe you've got a hope, but you're going to have a lot of pressure on you. I mean, anyone who thinks that Hollywood is all glamour and fun, I'll tell you what, you know, I don't think I would enjoy the high pressure environment of putting out a Hollywood film for maybe a couple of $100 million and a whole lot of producers and studio executives just, you know, just waiting to lynch you if you can't even break even. We're talking if you don't turn a big profit, if you don't make the top 5 in the box.
Absolutely, it's all blackjack, isn't it? You put in, you put in 100 million, they want 200 out at least, if not more.
Want to double up.
Absolutely. All right, we'll finish up there. So thanks again, Steve, for your insights on that particular topic.
It's interesting.
Absolutely. So looking ahead to next week, we're actually going to start a bit of a series talking about the future of certain things. So we talked about film today, so we're actually going to be talking about the future of film next week. So that's actually...
Is there a future?
Well, that's an interesting question to pose, isn't it?
There is, Ben, but not as we know it.
Absolutely, especially from what a lot of the things I've seen that people are talking about. So yeah, we'll be up talking about that next week. We'll be uploading this fairly shortly. So until next week, we'll catch you then.